All right, we are continuing with the functions of the integumentary system. So we have some different functions that our integumentary system provides, and the first of those is protection. So this is going to be protection against nature, so wind, water, UV light. It's going to help protect us against water loss because obviously we need to stay hydrated and stuff like that. It's going to protect against abrasive activity, so contact with grit, like dirt, microbes, harmful chemicals. It's going to offer some protection against that. And then sweat excreted from the sweat glands is going to deter a lot of microbes from over-colonizing the skin surface. And they're producing a chemical called dermacidin, which has a lot of antibiotic properties. There are bacteria that live on our skin naturally and should be there, and they also help protect us, but there are other bacteria that are not good to be on our skin, and even the bacteria that do live on our skin naturally, we don't want too many of them. So our sweat is going to help keep those bacteria from overgrowing and from other bacteria to take hold and set up shop there and start causing infections and stuff. All right. So sticking with this protection concept here for a minute, that UV sunlight, obviously the UV light can damage our skin, but it's basically our body's seeing it as better to damage the skin that we can actually shed and get rid of than it is to damage any of those deeper layers of tissue, which we are, not going to kill off and get rid of the same way we get rid of a lot of our keratinocytes in our skin layer. All right. If you're curious, there is a video linked in the additional resources page in this module that talks about how tattoos work, which are basically creating a bunch of little wounds in the skin and depositing ink into those wounds. It's actually really, really fascinating how that tattooing process works. So if you're interested in that, definitely check out that video on that additional resources page. All right, our next function of the integumentary system is sensory. So as we've seen already, the skin contains a lot of specialized sensory nerve structures to detect different types of touch, as well as surface temperature and pain. So those Meissner's corpuscles, these are for touch, so tactile means touch, so that's helping detect that. Pacinin corpuscles, these are going to respond to vibrations. Our Merkel cells are going to also be touch receptors. These are specifically for light touch again. And then we've got a lot of other pain and temperature receptors scattered around in our skin layers. As well as nerves, motor nerves, which are for controlling those erector pili muscles, which are going to control movement of the hair. So if you get goosebumps and so your hair's standing up, it's from those erector pili muscles. So here is a histology slide, a light micrograph of a Meissner's corpuscle, so pretty close to that epidermis layer, but still located within that dermis. Our next function is thermoregulation, so temperature regulation. We are regulating our temperature by sweating. So secreting, getting rid of water, salt, and some other substances off the surface of the skin is going to help cool us down. So as that water from the sweat evaporates, it is going to produce that cooling sensation. Shivering is another thermoregulation mechanism. These are muscle contractions to help generate heat. So any muscles connected into that skin layer are going to be that shivering to help generate heat, and that's initiated again by those temperature receptors on our skin that are going to initiate one of those processes, and then redistributing heat. So our body is producing heat by undergoing metabolism constantly. Fever, again, also producing a lot of heat during infections and stuff. So our integumentary system is going to help control heat loss from the surface of the skin, so it's going to increase heat loss in the case where we are getting too hot internally, and then our skin can also help reduce how much heat is being lost in cases where we're really, really cold and we do not want to be losing heat. So those blood vessels that are going up into the skin, they are going to get very, very narrow, so there's not as much blood flow going to them, which is going to reduce how much heat is being lost. So our skin does a lot of really crazy things. So here's some thermoregulation images. So again, that skin surface, getting rid of heat in hotter environments, that blood circulation is going to increase. So those blood vessels are going to get wider. They're going to allow more blood to flow so we can get rid of that heat. And then the opposite is true, is that blood circulation is going to stay out of the upper layers of the skin, so that we're retaining a lot more of that heat. And then another function of the integumentary system is vitamin D synthesis. So our skin has the ability to create vitamin D when it's exposed to UV radiation. So UV radiation, interestingly, is both a positive and negative for us. It's a positive in very small doses, negative in small to large doses. So there's a very delicate balance that should happen here. Vitamin D is absolutely essential for our ability to absorb calcium and phosphorus, which is required for our bones to stay healthy. So not enough sun exposure leads to a lack of vitamin D, which can lead to a condition called rickets, which is where the bones start to actually bend, as well as creating very, very brittle and fragile bones. Vitamin D is also really important for our overall immunity against a lot of different infections from bacteria, viruses, fungus, and other things. So really, really important that we get vitamin D. It does not take a lot of UV exposure to synthesize the vitamin D we need for a day, so it's only about 5 to 10 minutes of UV exposure that's necessary to produce all of the vitamin D that we need in a given day. But there are a lot of situations where this can be really, really challenging sometimes. So during winter months when we're not seeing as much sun, people can get a little bit low on vitamin D sometimes if there's been a lot of overcast days. Elderly people can also suffer a lot from vitamin D deficiency, and that is also going to cause softening of the bones. And so as a way of combating this, because as humans have evolved over time and have spent more and more time indoors, we've actually started adding vitamin D as a supplement to a lot of foods like milk and orange juice and stuff like that. Not just dairy milk, but also a lot of the non-dairy milks as well also has vitamin D added to it to really help combat all of these potential issues that can come up. And we'll continue our next video talking about some diseases and disorders that can happen in our integumentary system.